My name is Rafael, you're watching Rock and Roll Garage, and today we're going to talk about 18 singers that Axl Rose said are some of the best of all time. But first, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave your comment below. Tell me if you agree with the list or not. Well, Axl doesn't give many interviews. As you know, he's quite recluse. He's averse to the press. He doesn't talk to the press that much. But back in 2014, a website called Concert Hotels made a list of the greatest singers of all time in terms of vocal range. And they put Axl on the first position. He didn't agree with that, although he was flattered. And he sent a letter to Spin magazine at the time saying he was flattered by it and etc. But he then listed 18 other singers that he believed were much better than him to be on the first position. And let's start. This is what we're going to talk about today. There's no specific order to it. He only listed them, so we're going to talk about them in the order he listed. The first one is Freddie Mercury, the late legendary Queen vocalist. And obviously, it's quite interesting because Axl said many times that Queen is one of his favorite bands, one of his main influences, and he even said once that he believes Queen is the greatest band of all time. And he had the chance also to pay tribute to Freddie during the Freddie Mercury tribute show at the Wembley Stadium back in 1992. And he performed with the band, and one of the greatest moments of their show is certainly Axl Rose performing Bohemian Rhapsody. He appears on stage after that amazing Brian May guitar riff kicks in, and it's just amazing. The second person he listed is Elvis Presley, obviously the king, so-called the king of rock and roll. He inspired countless generations of artists worldwide, so he appears in almost everybody's list. Another one he mentioned is Paul McCartney, and he's a big Beatles fan and obviously a big fan of Paul's solo career, as one of the most famous songs Guns N' Roses covered is Live and Let Die, which was written by Paul for the James Bond, the 007 movie of the same name, released, if I'm not mistaken, in 1970. And it had Roger Moore as the Bond, as James Bond, if I'm not mistaken. It's a great movie. I love the 007 movies with Roger Moore, one of the greatest Bonds we had. And so he is a big fan of Paul McCartney. The next one on the list, it's another big influence he had, and it's Dan McCarthy, the late legendary vocalist of Nazareth, which is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated hard rock bands of all time. You know, Nazareth has such a great discography. They're not just the covers. And on the 1993 Guns N' Roses covers album, Spaghetti Incident, they covered one of Nazareth's most famous original songs, which is Hair of the Dog. Great track. So not only Axl, but Guns N' Roses, all the members were big fans of Nazareth. Another singer he mentioned was Janis Joplin, certainly one of the greatest female singers of all time. Another singer that we tragically lost too soon at the age of 27. She's part of the infamous 27 Club. And it's really sad. She left us back in 1970. Imagine how much more he could have made, so many great songs he could have recorded. The next one, he mentioned it, Michael Jackson. And the curious thing is that his bandmate Slash worked with Michael Jackson in the 90s, and he recorded the song Give In To Me from the album Dangerous, released in 1991, when Slash was still part of Guns N' Roses. And it's interesting because Michael was always searching for new great guitarists, right? Because that happened with Slash, inviting Slash to work with him in a track, and the same happened the decade before when not only Steve Lukather, who was an incredible session guitar player, worked with him many times, but inviting Eddie Van Halen to play the solo on Beat It. I mean, he was also always searching for great musicians to play with him. Another singer he mentioned is Elton John, who I really see a lot of influence on Axl Rose, in terms of how much Elton influenced him, because Guns N' Roses started with that debut album as an into-your-face, a punch-in-the-face hard rock band. And later on with the albums, a lot of, bigger ballads appeared until November Rain, for example. I mean, there's not a track, in my opinion, a Guns N' Roses track that mixes the influence of hard rock music and Elton John. I mean, when you see Axl on the piano, you have to remember Elton. Elton influence is enormous on Axl Rose, and they had the chance to perform together. Elton performed November Rain with them, and the great thing is that they're great friends. And back in 1994, when Elton was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it was Axl Rose who inducted him. And Axl said at the time during his speech, "No one has been there more for inspiration than Elton John." And the other one he mentioned it was Roger Daltrey, the Who's vocalist, and certainly one of the most famous voices in rock and roll music. Roger Daltrey, another incredible vocalist. Another one he mentioned it, and this one's quite curious, I think, who is Don Henley, the Eagles drummer and singer as well. And he has an incredible voice, but I would never expect that Axl Rose really liked the Eagles. But what an amazing band. It is nowadays, if I'm not mistaken, the best-selling, they have the best-selling album of all time in the United States, because of their greatest hits album. According to the RRA, the American Record Industry Association, they sold more copies, that album sold more copies than Michael Jackson's Thriller in the United States. So the Eagles has the best-selling record of all time in the United States nowadays, if I'm not mistaken. Another one that he mentioned it, and I think it's quite of an underrated singer as well, is Jeff Lynne, the Electric Light Orchestra leader, main songwriter and singer. What an incredible artist he is, a complete artist. And Electric Light Orchestra was also a big inspiration for Axl Rose. He mentioned it, the band many times. It's an incredible British band. If you don't know them, you should go check it out. What an incredible discography they have. And another one he mentioned it, and he starts to mention a few ones that are from other music genres. And the first one is Johnny Cash, who probably is the most rock and roll country artist of all time, I would say. I mean, Johnny Cash, it's at the same time, in my opinion, a country artist and a rock and roll artist, because, all the attitude, everything he stood for during his career, the heaviness of his lyrics. Take a song like Men in Black, for example, man. I mean, what a statement it is, that song. What an incredible thing. It's just, I think he probably was one of the first famous singers to play in a prison. And Metallica did that decades later. I mean, how edgy and how rock and roll, how metal that is, to play in a prison for the people who are there in jail, doing time. I mean, there's nothing more rock and roll or metal like that. And another one he mentioned it is Frank Sinatra, who certainly has one of the most influential and most famous voices of all time. Another really important American artist who sold millions and millions of records. He sold an estimated amount of 150 million records worldwide. That's a lot. Another one he mentioned it was Jimmy Scott, and this one is not that well known for us rock and roll fans. He was a jazz vocalist, and he was known for his natural contralto voice and for love songs. He had success in the 40s, 50s, and sadly he slid into obscurity before a comeback from the 60s until the 90s, when he had a comeback. Some of his most famous songs are Sycamore Trees on Broadway and Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child. He has a really interesting voice. I heard him before doing the research, and he's really a great singer. You should check him out. Another female singer he mentioned it was Etta James, one of the most important American musicians of all time for sure. She had hits like At Last, what a beautiful song. Tell Me Mama, I'd Rather Go Blind. I mean, what a tremendous song that is. And also Something's Got a Hold on Me. And, you know, she how many incredible tracks she recorded, and she really recorded in many different music genres. I mean, she recorded blues, R&B, soul, rock music, gospel music, and jazz. She was a complete artist for sure. And a younger artist that the youngest artist from the list he listed was Fiona Apple, and she was born in New York City in 1977. She was nominated 11 times for the Grammy Awards, and she won 3 times. And some of her most famous songs are Criminal, Paper Bag, Across the Universe, and I Want You to Love Me. She's the youngest one on the list, and Axl is quite a big fan of her. Another one she mentioned it, which is an American singer, but she became famous with a British band, and it is Chrissie Hynde, the Pretenders vocalist and guitarist. What a beautiful voice she has. I'm a big fan of the Pretenders too. And the whole Guns N' Roses gang loves her and loves the band as well. And more recently, when Guns N' Roses was touring in the United States, the Pretenders were promoting their latest album, and they were Guns N' Roses opening act for a few dates. Stevie Wonder is the next one on the list, and I mean, what can you say about Stevie? Probably one of the most prolific artists in terms of recording, I think, because he recorded his first albums when he was still a kid, just like Michael Jackson, but Michael died more than 15 years ago, and Steve is still here recording, so I think he probably is one of the most prolific artists of all time in terms of recording. His first hits were when he was still a kid, and I mean, how many other hits he had during this past decades, and how many incredible artists he collaborated with. One of the greatest of all time for sure. And the final one he mentioned it was the late legendary as well, James Brown. I mean, Mr. Dynamite, the Godfather of Soul, Soul Brother #1. Those were some of his nicknames, and one of the most important singers from the 20th century for sure. Music wouldn't have been the same without him. And that's it. That's Axl's list. Tell me if you agree with it. If there's someone on the list that you don't like that much, you don't think that should be here, and let's talk about it. Okay? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave your comment. If you want to read more, you can go to the description and read the article we wrote about that. And obviously, don't forget to visit rockandrollgarage.com. Thank you for watching, and I see you later.